Okay, welcome back, everybody. So today, wanted to continue with Gilui Arayot and kind of not try not to talk about the parsha, which is going to be hard because it's like so intense, and there's so many things this week that are just foundational to uh, Judaism, and by extension, the Noahide path. Um, But Gilui Arayot is like an interesting one, and I wanted to bring it up again because yesterday I was speaking to one of my non-Jewish friends, and he recently got married, and like he went on a honeymoon, went to the Vatican and whatever, and he he was telling me like about like how priests don't get married or like all this narishkeit, and he was like, well, what does the Torah say about that? Or like, what did Jewish people think about that? And I was like, yeah, that's just an abomination to like God, but whatever, none of my business. And, I really I didn't try to like, make it any, I didn't try to like filter it out too much because like the truth is just that, like, why are they going, like, these are supposed to be the holiest people. And that was something like he said is he said to me like these are supposed to be the holiest people in the church, and that's why they don't do this. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's dumb. That doesn't make any sense because literally the first thing God told Adam Arishon, the first man ever who was not a Jew, but anyways, he's like, hey, by the way, other than not eating from this tree, you also have to like be fruitful and multiply. So, and he reiterated this to Noach, and he reiterated it to the Jewish people in the way of like having different laws about appropriate relationships. And so it's very clear in Torah, it's very clear that this is a huge mitzvah, not just a huge mitzvah, but also the entire purpose of creation. And it sounds like on the surface level it sounds like, oh well, like my whole purpose is to like have kids. Like, no, not exactly, but yes and no. uh, no, in the sense that, like, of course, like there's much more to your life than your family. Like, you have other things in life. You affect other people, other circles, friends. Like, if you're a rabbi, your students. Like, you're right. There's life outside of your family, but at the end of the day, your family, like, having kids is how you emulate God the most because we have the power of creation, recreation, and not just in an animalistic way, in a very intentional way, and where we're doing that with intention, and we're doing it only for God, not just to like fulfill a desire. And when you look at it that way, it really doesn't make sense how priests or like these supposedly holy people would be abstinent or just like be celibate forever. And then we know all the other great stuff that comes with the priests and whatnot, and none of it's good. Like, it just leads to worse things. So as we say in halacha, um, there's schar mitzvah, which means the reward for a mitzvah is another mitzvah, but the same thing could be said by an avera, a sin. Like, the reward for doing an avera is just another avera, meaning like when you start going down the wrong path, you're gonna keep going down the wrong path, and that's like not, that's just like how it's gonna go. And being that this is also a Noahide commandment, it's kind of weird to put it that way because it seems like a positive commandment, like to be fruitful and multiply, but it's actually included within the prohibition of inappropriate relationships. Like, also, withholding yourself from marriage is an inappropriate relationship. Like, that's not appropriate. Like, you have to get married, and you know what? If Hashem has other plans, and he doesn't want you to find the shidduch, he doesn't want you to have kids, leave that up to him. But like, you can't just be like, oh well, like, stam, I'm just not gonna like whatever, because I just want to be a free agent and I just want to do whatever I want, or like I want to be a priest or something crazy. Then yeah, there's no like real justification for that. um And this also kind of this ties into like why, you know, because of my PTSD, like I just, keep bashing on these people, because it's just they're easy targets. What do you want me to do? And it's just true. Like they need to be bashed on because they're like concealing the truth, and they're saying no, this is the truth. They're calling their thing truth, and then just like lying. Okay, you know. And so it kind of sheds light on why it's so abhorrent to us, and why we should distance ourselves as much as possible from these kinds of systems of worship, because it's not that we're splitting hairs on the Mashiach thing. That's not like, yeah, fine, like everyone knows he's not Mashiach. Like, all right, like we're over that. But even more than that, it's just literally opposite of Judaism. It's like it couldn't be more opposite. It's like they just sat down around a table, all of like Yoshki's little cabal. Like they just sat around the table and they're like, guys, like let's just take every Avera in the Torah and do it like at the same time. Like, okay, like that doesn't make any sense. And then that's godliness. All right, get out. Like, well, we're gonna throw you off the building. You know what I mean? Like, head first. I don't care. And this is why it's so bad, because they teach things that, like, in this exact field, something as holy as marriage, something as holy as like having kids. This is like the highest level of kedusha, of holiness, that you as a human being could ever attain. And they're saying, oh well, if you really want to attain true holiness, then you shouldn't have kids, and you should. I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. So today I just wanted to talk about a little bit about the institution of marriage, and this is not something I know about from personal experience, obviously, but it's something that I've come to appreciate, being in the Jewish community and seeing people happily married and seeing people actually doing the thing, which is not something that I ever witnessed ever in my life, growing up. Like my parents split up when I was 3, which was kind of like a blessing in disguise, because they weren't meant to be together. Like it was, like, I don't know, like I don't even know how they ended up together. That was a miracle on its own. Like, yeah, like I don't get it. Like I wouldn't have put whatever. So yeah, definitely better off that way. But also I was way too young to even know what was going on. So like I don't know any different. It didn't affect me in a negative way, at least not in a very like revealed way, which cannot be said about other people whose parents divorce when they're older, because then it actually affects them, and it affects their relationship with their parents and all this stuff, which is actually kind of a subsection of what we're talking about, right? Which is why it's so important to respect the institution of marriage, not just as this like archaic thing that you have to do, or like that we have to do to control women, God forbid. Like that, are you kidding me? Like control women? Like, yeah, good luck. Like, yeah. Like, yeah, like no, we just live here, man. Like, we just work here. Don't ask us any questions. If I had a nickel for every time my rabbi said, let me ask my wife, like I would be a rich man. But it's true. It's so true. And it's totally opposite of what our modern world tells us about marriage. We grew up, like anyone who's secular, who grew up secular or not Jewish, like as well as I do, like how society regards marriage, and it's usually thought of as a very oppressive thing, a very backwards, like archaic thing. It's like, well, why would you want to tie yourself down? You like be with the same person every day for the rest of your life? Like, oh, like chas v'shalom, like this is like something that's like not even conceivable to the modern world. But why? Because in actuality, the way the non-Jewish world regards marriage to begin with is not appropriate. They don't take it seriously. And this is something that I wish I would have prepared better for this class, because there is like there is something from the Gemara, and I believe it's from Sanhedrin. And I remember reading this because I was reading about this exact topic. And or maybe I don't know. I don't even want to try to like quote it, but basically the idea is that there's a question like why by Jewish people have to have all these different rituals, and there's Kiddushin, which is like the actual coming together, and then there's like the engagement and the chuppah and the ketubah and all this stuff. Like, what is all this stuff, and like why don't the nations have this? Like, what's the big deal? And the answer is because they don't take marriage seriously anyway. So it's like you can just say like, listen, if you're living together, if you're sleeping together, you're together. Like you're a unit. You know what I mean? And like in the state of Texas, that's also the case. Like if you're common law, married, like fine. Because at the end of the day, when you stop being together, right, you see someone else, like that's pretty much the end of that, right? You can just assume like you're not together anymore, and this is like, obviously it shouldn't be treated this way. Marriage shouldn't be treated like, oh, we could just come and go as we please, but unfortunately it is, and we see that even today. The divorce rates are insane. Like they're over 50% easy. And that's just people on their first marriage, like forget people on their second marriage who are getting divorced. You know what I mean? Like this is insane. But it's not exactly uncharacteristic either. It's very expected. It's very like it goes with the theme of the nations. And so yeah, I just wanted to like kind of go over that and like why marriage is so important for a non-Jew. And I understand like it's tough. It's tough out there, and I'm not a shadchan, right? Like I'm not a matchmaker. Like I'm like if you're watching this shir like live or on YouTube, like I can't help you, man. But like if there's someone like you out there, there's someone like you out there. If that makes sense. Like you can't be the only one like with this mindset. And you're not. I mean, I know that for a fact. You go online and there's like Noahide this, Noahide that. But the funny part is that most people who come closer to Hashem, especially at a younger age, they just want to convert. They're like, well, screw this. Like, why would I why would I stick around? And that's kind of like what makes it tough is people who are like minded are usually just gonna convert, and like that doesn't mean you have to convert. It doesn't mean anything, but it does kind of like make it a little bit more difficult. Let's see, what else did I want to say about that? But by the way, like please interrupt me with questions because it will help the flow of the whole thing. Um, yeah, why is it important? Besides that, God literally told you to do it. Besides that, like yeah, but also we have a mission, Jews and non-Jews, to uh, be co-creators with Hashem in creation. And this is more revealed by a Jew because we have all these commandments, and it's more like clear and obvious that we're doing extra stuff to bring the light of Hashem into the darkness of the world. And through revealing that light on the lowest level, we're actually doing what Adam Rishon was supposed to do. So we're actually like rectifying the sin of the tree of knowledge, which isn't like irreparable, by the way. Like the Christians will tell you like, oh, you're because Adam and Eve like did the thing. Oh, now you need yashki, and there's no way around it, and like you're gonna go to hell if you don't. And it's like, what? That doesn't even make sense. Like like I don't know if any of you like are familiar with like like I'm not a huge fantasy reader. I don't like it's not really my genre, but I know how they work, and there's all these like fan fictions and lore and like backstories that people make up. But you know what? They fit, okay? Like they actually fit within the story, right? Like it makes sense, like it's believable. What like this is Christianity doesn't even pass for fan fiction because it's not true to the lore. You have to stick to the lore. Like you have to stick to like anyway, like it doesn't even like I don't know. But they tell you this thing and they're like, "Oh, you're so far gone, like you need yashki." And it's like, "No, that doesn't even make sense." like in the context of the Bible. Like it doesn't make any sense. So don't like wipe that away. Now with this like fresh new idea of like what a human being is, it might be a little easier to think like, oh, like maybe, getting married and having kids is a worthwhile thing, not only because Hashem said so. Yeah, you should do it because Hashem said so. That's very important. But not everything has to be, as we say in Torah, Kabbalas Ol. Like Kabbalas Ol is means like the receiving of the yoke of heaven. And really, you do this kind of thing when you're faced with a challenge and you're faced with a really strong like desire, and you have to like restrict yourself, and you can't be on like a tzaddik mode all the time. Like you get moments of inspiration, but it's not realistic to expect to be on that level all the time. And so there's times where you just do things because like that's what you have to do, and that's okay. Like that's completely okay. It's completely valid. But not, you should really try to achieve a level of like, no, I understand why I'm doing this, and I understand why it's good, and I'm learning something from it, and I'm like becoming a better person. I'm not just being like a servant. Like you should be a servant in that way, but also understand that what you're doing is actually the best thing for you to do at the time. Like that's the best use of yourself, use of your energy, use of your time. And in that light, you might be able to find out why it's important to get married and why it's important to have children. And the flip side of it is why it's important not to mess around with this like realm of extreme holiness. And that's like that's why it's such a big deal. And if you read the Torah, if you keep up with the parshas, you see that some of the things that people get smitten for are this thing is Gilui Arayot, is like improper relationships. And one example, this is not from this week's parsha, fortunately for y'all, but several weeks ago, we read about Yehuda. And Yehuda had 3 sons, and his eldest son married her, but he how do I say this? He didn't do the thing. Like he was with her and whatever, but he didn't impregnate her, right? He was like, all right, let me like do something else. It's like, no, like that's illegal. You don't do that. Like imagine like I don't know, like imagine like you get married and it's like, oh, the chuppah and whatever, and you're finally with her, and the guy is just like, no, I'm gonna like not. You're like, what? Like, yeah, so boom, you're dead, like on the spot. And which is what happens. Like he dies by like divine. Oh, sorry, I thought it was like a smoke alarm. Never mind. Yeah, so he dies by like divine retribution, because he just like wasted his like potential for bringing life into the world, and he was doing so well that he died. And then so obviously what happens, not obviously, it might not be obvious to people watching this, but what happens when someone's husband dies? Well, the law is that the wife now has to marry the brother. This is a process called yibum, and it's called levirate marriage in English. I don't know what that means, but that's what it's called. But it's called yibum in Hebrew. And so that's what they did. And so this woman, Tamar, by the way, is her name, Tamar, married the second son. And then he did the same exact thing for some reason, and then he died because he did the same exact thing. So like I don't know what you were expecting, but here's the kind of like subtext of it, and it's not exactly like explicitly said, but it kind of is, that before Yehuda gave Tamar to his third son, he said that he was afraid that he would die as well, and basically he doesn't get that it was his son's fault. it was like their own fault. He still thinks like, oh, there's something wrong with this lady, like she's like doing some magic tricks or something. But no, it's like it was literally just they were not fulfilling the mitzvah. They were not doing the mitzvah right, and they were wasting their potential and wasting their capacity to bring life into the world, and that's why they died. And Hashem was basically like, "Hey, like you're literally a tzaddik ben tzaddik. Like you're like you get no slack here. Like you know better than this. So off with you, right?" And so Yehuda didn't want the same thing to happen to his third son, so he withheld her. He withheld her from him. And then as a result, Tamar disguises herself as a prostitute. This is like a crazy story because like this just like who is this guy Yehuda and his sons? Like they're like a bunch of crazy people. Like what is going on? And so disguises herself as a prostitute, and sure enough, like Yehuda sees her and he's like, oh, like I what? Like I don't get that. I don't get that at all. Like Yehuda the tzaddik. Like imagine if your father was like Yaakov Avinu, like, and you just like hired a prostitute. Okay, so this whole crazy story, and he doesn't have what to pay her with. And so he gives her his cloak and his staff, and then he goes back to get a goat to pay her, and then he comes back with the goat, and then she's not there, and then this, and then like later that night, or that I don't know, not that night, just like time later, like she is very obviously pregnant, and then people are like, like she's not married, but she's pregnant, so she was obviously like messing around, and so Yehuda's like, like burn her at the stake, it's like. Excuse me, like let's rewind the tape a little bit, but okay, and don't worry, like he gets what's coming to him. And just to finish off the don't want to leave you hanging here, like so he basically goes to the Sanhedrin. They're at the Sanhedrin, and then Tamar comes before the Sanhedrin, and or they're basted, and they try her and they find her like guilty, right? It's very obvious, like you're not married, you're pregnant. There's only one way that happens. And then she says, so the guy who impregnated me, these things belong to him, the cloak and the staff. And it's like, okay, like you're done. And so Yehuda has a very unique opportunity here because no one knows what's going on. Only Tamar and Yehuda know exactly what's going on because at this moment, Yehuda realizes that prostitute was Tamar. So he has a very unique opportunity to do tshuva, and Baruch Hashem he does, and he kind of regains his tzaddik status for that, and he basically says, admits to everyone in front of everyone that it was him who like impregnated her and hired her in this whole thing, like basically admits to it, and she's acquitted. She doesn't get burned, and the child that comes from here, if I'm not mistaken, is Peretz. And from Peretz comes King David and Mashiach and everything like that. So the line of Mashiach is crazy. It's like full of like improper relations, but that was only to like this story, right? There was inappropriate relationships, but that was only for the purpose of introducing a rectification in the end, giving an opportunity for tshuva in the end. And that actually, as we learn, the tzaddik falls 7 times and gets up, at the end. And that's kind of like interesting way to put it, because we also learn that a tzaddik is someone who never sins. So if you didn't sin, like how are you going to fall and be a tzaddik? Well, the truth is because when you do tshuva, you're literally like erasing all that stuff. And because you achieved this level, right? Because you fought the Yetzer Hara, because you fought against your inclinations, and you still did the right thing, that makes you greater than the tzaddik who just never had an evil inclination or just never like dealt with challenges. So yeah, I should be getting close to the end of the time here. Does anybody have any questions? I hope so. Oh my gosh. Okay. Um, yeah, so like do the thing. Don't let society like tell you what to do. Because it's like not true. None of it's true. And don't get discouraged. Like people who are not Jewish watching this. Like Jews watching this, converts. Like don't worry. Like we got it down. Like just call the shadcha and like whatever you're gonna date. Like fine, all right, boom. Like to the chuppah. Like it's not a big deal. It might be like stressful, emotionally challenging, and like anxiety inducing and all these things, but it's nowhere near impossible. By no hides, I can't say the same thing. It's like it's not impossible. God forbid. I don't want to say it's impossible, but you're literally like you're. It's an uphill battle, because most people in your circles are just not like hip to this stuff, and you're just gonna have to like deal with that, I guess. But keep learning, and I learned something that uh, is very like important is like the way you carry yourself and the way like you live your life like attracts like-minded people. And so like if you're going along and you're like especially younger guys like I don't know who's watching this like y'all are like not yeah I don't know who's like gonna be this audience I don't know but yeah, it could be discouraging. You go out with someone and then like it doesn't work out, then you go with someone else and it doesn't work out, and it just like keeps not working out, and you're just like, what gives? Like something other than me has got to give, right? Like that. I get that. Like it's really frustrating, but remember, like Hashem is not going to like without a reason um, disallow you from doing a mitzvah. Like maybe there's a higher purpose because we learn of like many tzaddikim who just never have kids, right? Or they never get married, and like oh what they're not righteous enough? Like no, God forbid. Like they're complete tzaddikim, but Hashem had other plans, and so like while on one hand we have to do our part, we have to do our half of the deal, and we have to meet Hashem halfway. While that is true, we also have to know that at the end of the day Hashem is in control and he literally runs the whole world, and like those feelings that you might get, discouragement or rejection, whatever, like just know like that is also from Hashem, and that's as much a part of your derech and a part of your journey as anything else, as the good times, as much of a part as it will be when you get married. So I hope that brings some chizuk, and I mean there's too much to talk about this concept, and if I prepared a little bit better I'd have more to talk about, but yeah, we're like probably got a few minutes left. So anyone have any questions, any thoughts, complaints, criticisms? I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm just like all right, yeah, well, that's all I have. But yeah, have a great Shabbos, for those who are observing. And yeah, I'll see you next week. B'ezrat Hashem.
Thank you.
Yeah, simcha.